Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, Conference Edition. In this podcast, we spotlight upcoming ColdFusion conferences and talk to organizers, workshop trainers, and speakers to uncover all the information you and your company needs to decide what conferences and workshops to attend and what sessions you need to see. Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, Conference Edition, and this year we're doing an Into the Box 2022 podcast series with some of the workshop trainers, and this one we're doing with Jon Clausen. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you.
So you're obviously the containerization expert. You don't like that name, but was it Captain Container we used to call you all the time?
Yeah, I think that's what my slide intro at Into the Box says, Captain Container. And I've been, I had originally developed the command box containers and maintain those images to this day. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm known for.
Yep. So the workshop is called Containerizing and Scaling Your Applications. And this is traditionally a really busy, full workshop, right? This one is one of the ones that sells out every year.
Yep. It's one of the most popular workshops we do. And honestly, a lot of people have done really wonderful things with containers after attending it. So I think it's proven itself over time to be something that jumpstarts people into the world of containers.
Okay, well, so let's start with who's the audience for this workshop in your mind?
Well, I think the core audiences are CFML developers who have some experience in DevOps, because if you don't have any experience in deploying CFML applications, you're going to struggle a little bit because there's a lot more layers that get added onto it. But the core audience is CFML developers who are looking to bring their application deployments or even development environments into a containerized workspace. I think that's something that a lot of people think about it in terms of deployment, but one of the things that containerization can do is it can also make all of your deployment tiers, from development, staging, production, whatever, much more predictable, stable, and consistent all the way through.
Yeah, for sure. So if they're here saying, oh, he's talking to me, that's me, I'm in that audience, why should they take the workshop?
Well, I think the biggest reason is that it will give them hands-on experience in deploying a CFML app with someone who has a lot of experience doing it. And myself and Grant Copley, who's also one of our senior developers at Ortis, will be assisting in that workshop with me. And so he'll be spending time with people who are doing hands-on. I'll be spending time people doing hands-on work. We'll also give you a background, probably spend some time talking about the different deployment options and also talking about continuous integration. So there's a lot of topics we cover in the day. It's a full day, but it's very well worth it.
Yeah. And then one thing I like about that too is that with our workshops, they're not a big workshop. Some workshops I've been to, and I've been a TA before where there's more TAs than we have in our workshops, but they had, 50, 100 people. Like we try and cap it about 10 or 15 people, right? So that is when we say hands-on and you've got someone there to help you, we really do.
Yeah, I think the last time we had 22 or 23.
Oh, wow. So we really did stretch that one. You must have had an extra TA that day.
I did actually have an extra TA. I had Bill Garut and Esme Acevedo.
Okay, very cool. So obviously you mentioned a few things real quickly, but you want to tell us a little bit more about what the workshop will cover?
Well, we start out the day talking, just kind of giving you a broad overview of the container space and what is containerization. And one of the things that's changed is that now more people are familiar with it. So we'll probably spend a little less time on that. And then we'll start digging into some of the details of setting up a container, like your first container. Here's how you do it. Here's how you, go ahead and start it up. Here's the commands that you need to run. And then we'll talk about starting to mount like your application files in there and passing in environment variables to configure things like data sources and caches and things of that nature. So we start pretty small, and then we kind of continue to work through. So the day begins with an overview, and then the basics of starting and stopping containers and Docker and working with it. And then we move into the application. And then the last part of the day is actually hands-on. It's one of the prerequisites of the class where you bring in an application that you want to containerize, preferably one that has one or two dependencies. And then you go ahead and you stand it up with a compose file as a stack with your databases, with any caches you need, and anything that any dependencies that you have. Basically, all those are available now in the container space. So there's really no need to develop in a lot of ways, in the old ways we used to, where you're, installing Microsoft SQL Server, and then you're installing this, and then you're installing that, and then you're installing, the binary for ColdFusion or Lucy. We'll show you how to do that and set up it stacked so that basically everything comes online, and is self-contained.
Wow. I mean, yeah, so you bring your app with you and you'll leave containerized. That's pretty cool. I didn't even know you guys did that extra step. I'm too busy teaching my own workshops, so that's really cool. And then
it's the last part, and it's sometimes people don't finish it all the way because it's a lot of work. I mean, it's if you have a complex app and you have to sometimes people bring in legacy code that's harder to containerize because of the way it's been set up, but you'll walk away understanding how to do that and what the next steps are for you to make that transition. Yeah, nothing else.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, it is a little different. There are things about Docker that means you have to, build your app a little differently or refactor it a little bit. But yeah, obviously you guys will talk about the things that are easy to do in Docker and the things you may have to rethink. So yeah, great,
exactly.
So you kind of touched on this already, but what will you think people will leave the workshop with, other than the app that they're starting to containerize?
I think the biggest thing that people will leave with is understanding, first of all, their own capabilities and how the barrier of entry is a lot lower than what they thought it was. One of the things that I guess one of the things I feel people walk into the workshop with is they walk into the workshop with this feeling like this is a really, like there's a really steep learning curve around it. And what they end up walking away from is it's not a steep learning curve, not as steep as they thought it was, and it's easily attainable. And then they walk away with feeling the benefits of what, transitioning to this type of, Dockerized environment can do for them on a variety of tiers.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I must say too, is like, if you're looking at Docker, the command box Docker images, Jon's worked on them for a long time, and other people at Ortus have chipped in and sort of worked on it. But a lot of the problems you see normally with Docker, some of the pain points we've tried to make easy. And so working with environment variables and a lot of other things, I mean, you've got a lot of cool stuff in that does a lot of that, like startup times. You've got like a lot of cool features that we built into these command box Docker images. And so some of the things you might have to have figured out how to solve them before, they're done for you. And if you follow the things that Jon's going to show you, it's a lot easier than you think. So if you mess around with Docker trying to convert your old, ColdFusion installation or your Lucy installation and try to solve problems, a lot of them are already being solved. So I think once they see that too, and you show them that, they're like, I get it now. Like, yeah, it's not as bad as I thought. Like you said, they're a little more, fear of the unknown, right? Before you come in, you're not sure how much you don't know. And so, but yeah, I love the fact, because when I've tried to do other stuff in other languages with Docker images, I'm like, man, I really wish we had this stuff that command box does. So and those command box Docker image scripts are pretty cool. And
I think, and there's a lot of things you can do with, just with the modules that are installed with them, with cfconfig and the .env modules alone. You can configure your entire CFML engine. So updates and things like moving between, when Adobe releases, an update for 2021 or whatever, or Lucy releases, 539 or a 539 patch, 5.3.10, whatever. It's trivial to update those images because all you have to do is pull the latest version of the image. And I think once people see that, it's like, you don't have to run all these installers and worry that your system's going to get borked somehow. You just simply pull the latest version of the image, you rebuild your image from there, and you're done.
Yeah.
And I think that's, those things are also barrier of entry things. They're things that cost us time that we don't need to spend when we could be developing cool things and cool features.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love the way the Docker does that with the layers, right? You just rebuild that layer and then everything else stacks on top of it again, and away you go. And you switch that bottom layer out to update this or update that, and it's done. And so, and obviously you and Brad do a great job staying on top of all these things. These Docker images are updated, almost as fast as the blog posts come out from Adobe, because sometimes they release it, then they vlog it the next day.
Yes. But if it's on a Friday, it might be Monday before I do it, but usually it's within 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah. We'll say, a business day. How about that? Usually a business day or two. Yep. So that's, it's really cool. So you've obviously mentioned a little bit about requirements, but you want to give us a breakdown? What are the prerequisites? What are the requirements? So, what gives the attendees the best chance of making this workshop a success?
Well, I think that the requirements of having your machine prepared when you come in, and those are listed in the workshop outline. But having the machine prepared, having Docker installed, and if possible, because sometimes we've had spotty broadband, pull the latest version of the command box image and maybe any images you think you're going to use for database servers or anything else. So if you're going to use a SQL server, just pull the latest version of that image. Even if you had to pull a variation of it, pulling the base image will mean a lot less download time because of the way that Docker handles layers. So I think those are the first things. I think the other thing to come in with is an idea that, is an idea of what your end in mind is, if you will. And saying, okay, what do I want to do with this technology, or what could I see myself doing with this technology? Because adults tend to learn by having something that's very applicable to their real world. So if you know where you're going with it, you're going to know the questions to ask, and that's going to make the whole workshop better for you, and it's going to make it more interactive for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of people use it in development, and that consistency that you mentioned before is a big piece of it. And so maybe that's their goal, is getting to the point where they can develop it locally with Docker. And then from there, usually you hit the same problems you would hit going to production. So working through those tiers is, a good way to work. But very cool. So then, of course, you said bring a sample app, 1 or 2 dependencies or whatever, like database, etc. And then you'll work on that as well. So very cool. I mean, like I said, this is a great workshop, and there's a lot of great content in here. And if you guys are playing with Docker a little bit, or really thinking about using it, or maybe evaluating if you should, I think this would be a good workshop for you. So any final little tips or tidbits there?
Well, I think that, the big thing is you get out of it what you put into it. So if you're going to attend the workshop, come with an idea that you want to, come with an open mind and an idea that you want to learn. And the other thing is that part of that open mind, when you're starting to talk about containerization, is letting go of that old monolithic hardware mindset, which is that things, that servers are monolithic, immutable objects. In the Docker world, everything except your files they're temporary. And so I think that if you come into that with a mindset that you might have to make some shifts in your model around what you see, how you see application deployment and how you see servers and things like that, I think you'll be able to pick up things a lot faster.
Very cool. And then just a note too, like you did mention using commands and everything. So I think that's important. Some people don't have CI/CD set up and everything, and you can still do these things at the command line. You could write little scripts to sort of do your builds and everything. Obviously, CI/CD is great because it'll handle all those steps for you and everything. But just because you maybe aren't using CI/CD yet, don't let that put you off. You can do this outside of it, because
that's a small little chunk where we talk about how to utilize and build images, but that's not necessarily. I mean, just setting up a development environment alone. If you've got more than one person on a development team, or you bring another developer on, I mean, you're talking, sometimes it takes days to onboard a new developer when you've got all these, dependencies you're dealing with and troubleshooting and things like that. With Docker, it can take as little as 15 minutes just to set it up after you've pulled the images, So it's a big change.
Yeah, that's a good one. So great. Well, thank you for your time, Jon. I think this is a lot of great information, and hopefully we reach some people, and they'll have more people at your workshop. I'm sure you'll be pretty full. So, guys, if you get a chance, grab your tickets before the end of June, and you get the early bird special. And remember, we do sell out. Obviously, last time Jon extended the numbers a little bit. So, but don't miss out. It's a great workshop, and I think you guys will get a lot out of it. So, thanks again, Jon, and we'll see you down to the box.
All right. Thank you.
Show notes for this episode can be found on conference.modernizerdie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have a link to YouTube playlist to find more videos just like this. Music from this podcast are used under a royalty-free license from sound.com and bluetreeaudio.com.